Here's a weird question. What if being alone is actually what made us human? We usually think connection defines us, language, families, TikTok comment sections. But what if isolation played the bigger role? From cave dwellers to astronauts, moments of loneliness have shaped our brains, our behavior, and even the way we build civilizations. So, could loneliness be the reason we became us? Let's rewind, way back. Early humans weren't exactly posting selfies or group chatting around the fire. For most of our existence, life meant small tribes, danger, and long stretches of silence. But isolation, that uncomfortable, quiet feeling, might have been one of evolution's best teachers. It forced us to think, plan, create stories, and eventually invent society itself. And today, in a world where we can message someone on the other side of the planet in 2 seconds, it's kind of ironic. We're more connected than ever, and somehow lonelier than ever. Picture this. You're a lone Homo erectus about 1 million years ago. You've wandered too far from your group. The forest is silent. Every sound might be a predator or dinner. That primal panic, that's the root of loneliness. But here's the trick. That discomfort pushed us to seek connection. Isolation created emotional pain, and that pain evolved as a survival alarm. The lonely ones were the ones who needed the tribe, and the ones who returned to it survived. So in a twisted way, loneliness wired our brains for empathy. Without it, we'd be cold, disconnected animals who never bothered forming communities. Fast forward a few thousand years. When early humans were stuck alone during storms, migrations, or night watches, their minds filled the silence with stories. They imagined spirits, gods, ancestors. They painted on cave walls, not just to communicate, but to not feel alone. That's the crazy part. Isolation gave birth to imagination. When there was no one to talk to, we invented invisible friends, divine ones. Religion, art, philosophy, they might all trace back to the simple human need to make solitude meaningful. Not all isolation is bad. Some of history's greatest breakthroughs came from people being alone. Thinkers, monks, inventors. Isaac Newton discovered the laws of motion while quarantined from the plague. Nietzsche said, "Great thoughts are conceived in solitude." And honestly, he's got a point. Solitude lets you hear your own thoughts, something rare in the noise of civilization. But there's a fine line between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is chosen. Loneliness is imposed. One expands you, the other eats you alive. Let's jump to the Middle Ages. Isolation was practically a lifestyle choice for monks, hermits, and mystics. People locked themselves in stone cells for decades to speak to God. Some even built small window holes just big enough to receive food or communion. And you might think that's crazy. But their isolation reflected a deep human instinct, the belief that stepping away from society brings truth. Of course, others saw it differently. The line between enlightened and insane was pretty thin. The desert hermits of early Christianity were both revered as saints and feared as lunatics. Isolation became sacred and terrifying. Jump to modern psychology. When scientists began studying isolation in the 20th century, the results were brutal. Prisoners in solitary confinement suffered hallucinations, paranoia, even physical pain. Experiments showed that after just a few days without social contact, the human brain starts breaking reality apart. In other words, the same isolation that once helped us evolve can now destroy us. That's the paradox. We needed loneliness to become human, but too much of it reminds us we're still animals. Now, fast forward again to us, the digital age. We're never more connected and never more isolated. You can scroll through hundreds of faces a day, message anyone instantly, but somehow it's not the same. Because evolution didn't design our brains for screens. It designed them for eye contact, touch, voice, presence. We replaced campfires with notifications, but the primal need underneath is the same, to belong. And when that belonging breaks down, when we feel invisible, it hurts as much as physical pain. Literally. Brain scans show loneliness activates the same regions as being burned or punched. No wonder scrolling alone at 2 a.m. feels like emotional starvation. Here's the twist. Isolation didn't just create sadness. It built civilization. When early humans realized they couldn't survive alone, they started cooperating, hunting, sharing food, building shelters. Villages grew from that cooperation. Then cities. Then nations. Isolation was the push. Connection was the response. Every major leap in human history, language, religion, technology, came from trying to bridge the gap between me and you. Even writing, humanity's first social network, was started as a way to communicate across distance. Clay tablets were basically ancient DMs. And think about it this way. Evolution shaped us not just to enjoy company, but to suffer when we're alone. That suffering made us invent culture, music, even love. Without the pain of isolation, there's no motivation to connect. Loneliness was the price of consciousness. Once we realized I exist, we also realized I'm separate. That awareness, the isolation of being an individual, forced us to create meaning. It's kind of poetic. The more self-aware we became, the lonelier we felt, and the more we reached out. That's the human loop. Now look to the future. Space travel. Astronauts spend months or years in isolation, millions of miles from Earth. NASA studies them not just for physical endurance, but for psychological survival. Because the farther we go, the lonelier we get. And here's what's fascinating. Astronauts describe space isolation as awe mixed with despair. They feel small, but also connected to something larger. It's like the old hermits in stone cells staring into eternity, except now the cell floats above Earth. Isolation might be our oldest test and our final one. If we look back, the evidence is everywhere. Loneliness made us social. Solitude made us creative. Isolation made us need each other. And that need built everything we call civilization. The paradox is that we evolved through isolation, but now connection is what keeps us sane. Every invention, from firelight to Wi-Fi, is really just us fighting the same ancient silence. So maybe isolation didn't just make us human. It keeps reminding us to act like it. So the next time you feel lonely, remember, it's not a weakness. It's a whisper from the oldest part of your brain saying, hey, you're human. Go find your tribe. And speaking of tribes, if you made it this far, welcome to ours. Hit subscribe so you don't wander off into the algorithmic wilderness. And drop a like if you've ever felt that weird mix of loneliness and curiosity that makes you wonder, maybe this is exactly what makes us human. Because, honestly, it probably is.